Hello, and welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today, we are going to talk about mindfulness and grief. So, stepping off of my episode a minute ago about self-care, we're going to get a little woo-woo. I guess it's not woo-woo, but we're gonna get a little into this here with some mindfulness. Before we dive into that, though, I would like to remind you all that you can find me on Patreon, patreon.com/NikkiTheDeathDoula. For as little as $1 a month, you can get some grief affirmations in your email. You might get access to some bonus content. I'll give you a shout out here on the podcast, and you can get early access to my episodes, and when I have guests on, you can get access to the video of the conversations I have with my amazing guests. So patreon.com/NikkiTheDeathDoula. As always, all the money that I receive from my Patreon goes to a fund so that I can provide pro bono work to those who cannot afford my services. So there you go. I'd also like to give a little shout out to the Feminist Podcast Collective, of which I am a member. And we have such a cool group of ladies, and I think we have a couple dudes on the group now too, but we have a great group of people in our podcast collective, and I love chatting with them on our meetups and love listening to their other shows. So speaking of that, I'm going to pause here and let you listen to another one of the podcasts within the collective.
Dear Reframables, welcome to our podcast.
I'm Nat.
And I'm Beck.
Two very different sisters who try to reorient life through the stories we tell.
We call it reframing.
Sometimes we do it through conversations, just the two of us.
And sometimes we bring in artists, thinkers, and creators to help us along.
Always, we like to leave you with some new reframable to chew on
as we work through life's big and small stuff together.
Okay, so thank you for bearing with me to hear that. So let's dive right in. Let's start talking about mindfulness and grief. First of all, you may have heard the term mindfulness before. It's getting to be another one of those buzzwords like self-care out there in improving yourself and improving your mood and your life and making things more meaningful. So let's talk about what mindfulness is first, and then we'll get into what it means for grief and how to use it. So the shortest way I can think of to describe this is mindfulness is just being aware and paying attention to a present moment without any type of emotion or judgment to it. So a key thing a lot of people hear about this is using mindfulness to deal with anger or big feelings, which again, why we're going to talk about this with grief. But when you have that instinct of, oh my God, I'm suddenly really angry about this thing, instead of just immediately acting on it or just raging, taking a mental step back and saying, okay, I'm angry right now. And just step one, just recognizing the fact that I am feeling this feeling without being upset at. It's like, I'm angry and I hate that I'm angry, or I'm angry and this person deserved it. Just nope, no judgment, no quantifiers, no qualifiers, just I'm angry. This is anger I'm feeling. So we'll get into more on how to use this with grief in a minute, but as far as using mindfulness, it's good for everything. And you don't have to necessarily be, sitting in lotus pose and meditating, unless that's something you like to do. I personally, my legs don't like to sit in lotus pose. It hurts. I'm getting old and my joints can't do that anymore. But find a comfortable spot to sit down if you want to practice meditating. And here's the thing with mindfulness practices and meditation. Like I said, you don't have to be sitting all peaceful in lotus pose looking like a Buddha and, for an hour and a half, just letting your mind, you can meditate for a minute and a half. You can meditate for 45 seconds. It is a practice. It's one of those things that is never perfect, and you continue to do it throughout your life. But meditation and mindfulness are a practice. So you practice at it, and knowing you'll never necessarily get it quote unquote right, and you'll never be perfect at it, but it's going to be different for everybody. So maybe for you, it's lying down. Maybe for you, it's sitting in a chair. Maybe for you, it's sitting in a hammock, or it can be different for everybody. But the biggest key is to just be comfortable. Be comfortable without falling asleep. That's why a lot of times they kind of recommend you don't lay down for meditations or mindfulness practices, because you don't want to get too relaxed and fall asleep. I know I've been guilty of that a couple times, but the key is to be comfortable, right? So you get comfortable, sit down in a comfortable position. It's good to be comfortable but alert. So again, maybe not laying down. You don't have to be uncomfortable. You don't have to like sit in a position so you're like, oh, I'm aware that my back is in a weird position, so I'm staying. No, just be comfortable. So why is mindfulness such a big buzzword? And why is this such a thing that everybody's talking about as far as dealing with all your big emotions or whatever it is in your life? Why mindfulness? Well, there have actually been some research and studies, and I will link what I can find in the show notes here. There were a couple studies I found through the National Library of Medicine, and there was a great article I'll link here on research and mindfulness that has links within the article that points to the actual studies. So I'm not just reading Facebook posts on this, I promise. But there have been lots of studies on how mindfulness can help train people to deal with grief, deal with loss, deal with anger, deal with depression. And I'm just saying the words deal with here. We're not talking about curing, okay? Don't confuse any of this with this is a cure-all, okay? So mindfulness is just something to help you cope with things. But mindfulness, much like meditation or cognitive behavioral therapy, there have been research that shows that it will actually change the mapping of our brains and how our synapses are receiving information and spitting them back out again. I learned a lot about this when I went through some assistance with my mental health crisis, that, the synapses in our brain start thinking a certain way. They start moving a certain direction. And it's really hard to get them to move into a different direction without correcting it, right? Like you get you hear the word trigger a lot. You get a trigger like something that might, for me, like something that causes me anxiety is loud noises. So I hear a loud noise, my brain immediately reacts and it says, this is bad, run away, hide, you're a terrible person. And then it goes into a spiral. You're weird, you're not normal, you're a terrible person, you're stupid, like whatever. And that's just the map that my brain has created for that reaction to a loud noise. Whereas if I can work on changing that map, it's going to take effort on my behalf, but I can start focusing when I hear that trigger, when I hear sudden loud noises, I can stop and say, oh, my brain is reacting. I heard a sudden loud noise. This was just a sudden loud noise. I'm okay. I'm safe. My body is shaking right now. I'm feeling this reaction. This is normal. This is okay. Everything is safe. Now we can move on with our day. So it's just a matter of recognizing these patterns and looking at them without judgment and taking it from there. So what about grief, right? Well, we know what grief is. We know how grief shows up. I talk about that a lot on this show. We have so much that goes on in our brains, bodies, minds, everything with grief. You might have physical symptoms. You'll have cognitive effects. You might have issues with memory. There's social withdrawal, spiritual. Some people question their faiths. Changes in your identity, behavioral changes in your relationships. Like grief affects a lot of things. So how do we grieve with mindfulness? Well, step one, accept your feelings. Okay. And I say this a lot, like just know you're going to feel some big feels during grief. You're going to feel some things that you might not like. And again, I try not to use the words good and bad because emotions are just emotions. They're neither good nor bad, but just accepting them. All right. You know what? I am grieving and I'm going to feel everything. Okay. That's step one. Don't be afraid to express your feelings in a constructive way instead of a destructive way. And I've had plenty of episodes on how to do that. I think things like journaling, art, exercise. Yeah, there's a million different ways. I know I have an entire episode on that somewhere. Scroll back and find it. Lots of different ways to express those feelings. Also, ask for help. Reach out. Talk to your friends. Talk to family, a spiritual person in your life, a chaplain, a psychologist, counselor, whatever. But reach out. Or even just talk with other people who might have experienced the same loss in their own way, that you both lost the same person. Like, how are you doing? Do you remember when XYZ? Share stories, but reach out to other people. And I just had that whole episode on self-care. You have to take care of yourself. So put your oxygen mask on first, but you have to take care of yourself. And then find ways to celebrate your loved one or whatever it was you lost. Find a way to keep their memory alive with you and honor them. Now, how to use the mindfulness? Like, what can we do when grief shows up and we're feeling all the big feels? First thing we can do is, again, recognize that feel. Okay, I'll use an example here. Let's say you've lost your best friend. They are gone, either death, whatever, but your best friend is now gone. And this is the person you talk to all the time. And, it's some time has passed and you're feeling a big feel. You're very sad this day. Step back and recognize, I'm sad right now. I'm grieving the loss of my friend. That's what this is. I am sad. Okay? Accept that this isn't going to be the same every time. Just know that one day you're going to feel this type of sad. The next day you might feel this type of sad. You might feel angry the next time, but just stop and recognize what you're feeling. Okay? Take a moment to think about that feeling. And again, this is the hard part, and this is where practice comes in. Okay? Don't expect you can do this first try. I still struggle with this. Take that feeling and just reflect on it. Okay, I'm really sad right now. How is this sadness presenting in my body? Where do I feel it? So if you just take time, step back, if you can find your place to sit quietly, close your eyes. Where am I feeling this? Am I feeling it? I'm feeling it right in my gut right now. I'm feeling it in my core, like right in the middle, under my heart, right where my stomach is. I don't know. I'm feeling it here right now. Okay, that's where it's sitting with me today. What am I going to do with this sad? Take some time to think about how you want to handle your sad. Do you want to cry? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to tell a funny story about that person? But step one is just recognizing what it is you're feeling and holding it. You can hold it for a minute. I like to, when I'm really struggling with a big feeling, I like to sit down and pretend this big feeling is a ball. And I will close my eyes and I will literally hold my hands in front of me like I'm holding a ball. And I just sit there and imagine that feeling as a ball and I'm holding it. I'm honoring it. It exists for a reason. It's there. So I have this ball and I hold it. I give it its space it needs. And then when I'm done, I can set that ball aside and go on with my day. Now that said, if you hold that emotion and then you set it aside, that doesn't mean that you're getting rid of it. Doesn't mean it's not there. It's still there. And it might still be with you, it might still be nearby. But you can see it separately from it just being all through your body. One other way that we can utilize a mindfulness practice is in visualizing our new selves. So what do I mean by that? Well, this is something I work on with my clients, so here I am giving away some trade secrets. But when you suffer a significant loss and you are grieving, you are not going to be the same person you were before. Sorry to have to break this to you, bad news things, but you're never going to be the same person you were again. You're going to become a new person, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Okay, this can be a good thing. I, share stories about the loss of my brother and many other losses I've had, and I feel like all of those have led me to where I am today as a death doula and a grief coach. And many other stories I hear of people using their grief to make something good. So you can become a new person. You will become a new person. So if you're still in the throes of it and you're having trouble accepting it and it's just everything is awful and I want everything to go back to the way it was, take some time to sit down and visualize who you want to be. You don't like where you are right now, obviously, because you're feeling feels you don't enjoy. You're feeling icky feels. Who do you want to be? What do you want your new self to look like? Take some time to really visualize who this is, what they do each day, how they react to things, how they respond to others. Who do you want your new self to be? So there's all types of practices out there for mindfulness, and there's all different websites and apps and things like that you can utilize to help you practice mindfulness and meditation. I am not affiliated with anyone, but I personally use Plum Village a lot, which has a lot of readings and teachings from Thich Nhat Hanh, but there's also a lot of great meditations in there, and I utilize those a lot. And it also just has like meditation timers, because the tricky thing with mindfulness and meditation is not letting your mind go too far. And it's okay if your mind starts to wander, notice that and then come back. Again, you're not doing it wrong. You can't say, I screwed that up. Guess I can't do this. Nope. It's just your mind went over there to, I need to do the dishes. Okay, I thought about that. I'm coming back here. That they have timers that help you keep you grounded and keep you where you are. So, okay. So that is about it as far as mindfulness and using that with your grief. So it's just a way to take those feelings, hold them, recognize them, and honor them so that they don't become too overwhelming. I'm not one of those people that does guided meditations. I've never attempted to do one, so I'm not going to try to do one right now, but I will walk you through what it can look like for you. So basically, like I said at the beginning, you want to find a comfortable position. You want to be comfortable, and you want to just take a minute before you even think about the feels or what's happening. Just feel your body. Where are you? What do you notice around you? Feel the chair or the floor under your bum. Feel the floor on your feet if you're sitting in a chair. Feel the chair against your back. So just that can help get your brain firing on the processes you want it to by just recognizing things that are obvious to you. There's a little bit of a breeze coming in this window. This chair is under my bum. The carpet is soft under my feet. Just recognizing those little things around you to get started. Then you can start thinking about, okay, what is my feels right now? What am I feeling? Where is it in my body? And take some deep breaths, use good square breathing. I've talked about square breathing before, where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. So think of a square. Sometimes it helps to actually visualize the square as you're doing that breathing. But these are things I use with my clients all the time who are experiencing really big feels and very traumatic feels to help get them back to a quiet mind so that they can focus on what's presenting to them at that moment. It's a good way to ground yourself and to remind yourself where you are in the world, and that sometimes you get stuck up in the head, and it's okay to come out of that head and get back into the real world. All right? That's it. Grief sucks, you guys. I talk about it all the time. Grief is poopy. It's no fun, but you can get through it. It's going to feel awful at times. But the more you recognize that and the more you embrace it and hold it and give it the attention it needs and desires, the easier it's going to get down the road. Okay? All right. Well, we are now at the end of the episode, so you know what that means. It is time for the Death Deck. Woo. Okay, I'm going to shuffle the cards and pull one at a random. And, oh, I like this. Okay. In your final days, what would you like to smell? A, my favorite foods, fresh baked cookies and coffee, anyone? B, calming scents like lavender, rose, or sandalwood. Or C, fresh air from an open window. Can I pick D, all of the above? I would like all of those. I love the idea of an open window and fresh air. But I guess it would depend on what time of year it was and what the weather is doing. I do like lavender and sandalwood. Maybe not together, but individually. And I mean, who doesn't love fresh baked cookies and muffins and coffee and bourbon? I love. Okay. There's a million smells, so I don't know. I don't think I could pick just one, but I have a list of my favorites, and any one of those would be amazing. All right. I would like to hear what you answered to this question. What would you like to smell in your final days? You can reach out to me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Nikki the Death Doula. You can also find me on my website, nikkithedeathdoula.com, and tell me what your answer to this question. And if you have a story you would like to share on grief or loss, please reach out to me. I would love to hear your story. I'll have you on my show. And if you really enjoyed the show, please leave me a rating or a review. Oh, I can't say that. Rating or a review wherever you're listening. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. It's a good way for more people to find me. Even easier, just tell a friend. If you hear an episode and you're like, oh man, Susie would love that, go tell Susie to go listen to that episode. And then maybe she'll listen to it and say, oh man, my friend Becky would love this. Becky, go listen to the show. And then everybody's going to listen to my show, and that'll make me happy. So there you go. So please feel free to rate and review. That would help me out a lot. That's how the algorithms work, you guys. Our whole life now is just algorithms. Neat. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. And remember, as always, your grief is yours. Your feelings are valid. Grief doesn't always have to suck. Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula is produced by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC in Columbus, Ohio. Nikki the Death Doula LLC is for consulting, education, emotional support, and guidance, and is no way considered a funeral establishment or licensed mental health establishment. Scripts, editing, sound design, literally everything with this podcast is done solely by Nikki Smith of Nikki the Death Doula LLC, with the exception of the music. The music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. Licensing information can be found at filmmusic.io.